Let's talk about how the world actually works. I love having these conversations. Now, I've talked before about the news, and when I say news, I should definitely put in quotes like that, because the news isn't news. And I've talked about this before, but recently I'd watched a Joe Rogan video where he had mentioned the monetization of human suffering. And I think that phrase really sums it up well. I was already in my head thinking about there's really three things the news actually consists of. But when I heard that, the monetization of human suffering, I thought, yeah, let's talk about this a little bit more. So this is the newest epiphany I have about the news. I came up with these three categories. The news is fear, it's gossip, and/or it's an agenda. Again, fear, gossip, agenda. That's what the news is. So that's why for people like me, I don't care about the news, whether it's online, whether it's on one of the major stations there. Of course, we all know that CNN and Fox News are the same thing. They're just catering to different demographics. Tribalism. And what's funny is they're both based in New York City, just a couple blocks from each other. So it's like spy versus spy. Which one is the good guy, which is the bad guy? The secret is they're not. They're both doing the same thing, just for a different team wearing a different jersey. But let's process that. The news is they're selling fear. They want you to be afraid of something because they know our instinct. I mean, there's a reason the horror genre is a popular genre in movies. People like to be scared. They connect to that. They react to it. It's engaging to be afraid. Fear sells. So there's always something to be afraid of. That's part of the news. But when there's not enough to be afraid of that day, well, then we can resort to gossip. And it's funny if you notice how many headlines, all they actually are, they're talking about celebrities, who's having a baby with who offended somebody on Twitter. It's just gossip about celebrities. But that connects to people because I assume when people get involved in gossip, it makes them feel better about themselves because they're ultimately casting judgment on whatever celebrity that they're trying not to worship. And then lastly, an agenda. And maybe ultimately this is largely the backbone of a lot of news. But a lot of the times we assume if there's not gossip or fear involved, there's some sort of agenda that they're pushing. So for example, know that I'm politically neutral when I say this, but when it comes to the concept of global warming, I feel like this is an example of it. Because often we are presented news to which there's no solution. They show you the problem, but as far as you, the individual person, there's no obvious takeaway as far as what should I actually do. So when it comes to global warming and the environment, oh yeah, let's go be heroes. Let's save the earth. Let's save the planet. Well, the funny thing is, let's start with plastic. Let's start with plastic. We know that plastic is horrible for the environment. Then why doesn't the government make it illegal if it's so bad? Well, because lobbyists, they make sure that plastic can't be illegal because who makes plastic? The oil companies. It's one of their products. So they're being protected by the lobbyists, which is ultimately how the government works. So you can choose which side you want to be on, but I choose to be politically neutral because I know either way, there are agendas out there. There are things beyond us. There's always going to be something to fall in the category of fear to try to scare you. There's always going to be some kind of gossip going on, and there's always going to be some sort of agenda. But as far as me getting caught up in it and triggered by it, I don't have any interest in doing that. I'm past that point in my life. I know how things actually work. The news, for all practical purposes, isn't real. That's the conclusion I've come to. Because I am red pill, because I focus on what I can control and not on what I can't, most of the news is not something you can control. It's not something you have control over. It's not something that directly affects you. But they want you to believe that it does. And by doing so, what are they doing? You are serving as a customer of their time, which sells ads. That's how it works. And arguably so, am I doing the same thing with this channel? I try not to, but it's undeniable. I make money from these videos. I average $500 a month from these videos. And when you look at some of my older videos, they really so much more kind of play into people's fears and insecurities. And I tried to help those people. Years into this now, I realize I can't help people who don't want to be helped. And I've really branded myself as the red pill guy. So I feel that I'm doing my best to not simply cater to people who are very much victim mentality and self-centered and, oh, poor pitiful me. I'm trying to make it to where you may arrive with your insecurities, but before you leave, I want you to at least know there's another side where I can actually help you, and that's to focus on what you can control. I'd say step number one, unplug yourself from the news. Because let's face it, it's probably just fear that you're picking up. It's probably just gossip that you're engaging in, or it's probably some agenda that someone's wanting you to buy into. Most of this isn't real. Most of it doesn't matter. Ultimately, I could say this. It may be real, but if it doesn't affect you and you have no control over it, is it real? Maybe that should be the title of this video. If you have no control over it and it doesn't directly affect you, is it real? Ultimately, backing up my theory, the news, it's not real. Your comments belong right here.